All refused to marry the disabled alien princess, except one. Human Part 1. The Volanti Empire stretched across 300 star systems. Their ships were the fastest. Their technology was the most advanced. Their royal bloodline had ruled for 10,000 years without interruption. Every species in the galaxy respected them. Many feared them. But inside the golden walls of the Imperial Palace, there lived a secret that the Empire tried very hard to hide. Princess Aleth. Version was born without sight. For the Volanti people, this was not just a disability. It was a curse. Their entire civilization was built around a special gift. Every Volanti could see energy. They could look at a person and read their emotions like words on a page. They could sense danger before it arrived. They could communicate through light patterns that danced in their eyes. Aleth could do none of these things. When she was born, the palace doctors examined her for hours. They tried every treatment. Nothing worked. The emperor held his daughter in his arms and wept. Not because he loved her less, but because he knew how cruel the galaxy would be to her. And he was right on as Aleth grew up. She learned to live in a world that was not made for her. She could not see the beautiful energy gardens that the Volanti loved so much. She could not participate in the traditional light dances at festivals. When other children played games that required sight, she sat alone. But Aleth was not weak. She learned to use her other senses in ways that surprised everyone. She could hear footsteps from 3 rooms away. She could identify people by the sound of their breathing. She could feel vibrations in the floor that told her when someone was approaching. She taught herself to read using special touch scripts that her tutors created for her. Most importantly, she never complained. Not once. The years passed. Aleth turned 25. In Volanti culture, this was the age when royal children were expected to marry. Political marriages were how the empire maintained its power. Every princess, every prince was a tool for building alliances. The emperor knew this day would come. He had dreaded it for years. He announced that Princess Aleth would be offered in marriage to strengthen ties with the Galactic Coalition, a group of 12 powerful species who had recently united. Ambassadors from each world were invited to the palace. They would meet the princess. They would consider the match. The emperor hoped that at least one of them would see past her. Blindness. He hoped wrong. The first ambassador came from the Kreth Dominion. He was a tall creature with 4 arms and scales that shimmered like metal. He walked into the throne room with confidence. He bowed to the emperor. Then he was brought to meet Aleth. She sat in a chair near the window. Sunlight touched her silver hair. She wore a simple blue dress. She smiled politely as the ambassador approached. He looked at her for exactly 3 seconds. Then he turned to his aide and whispered something. The aide nodded. The ambassador bowed again to the emperor and said that the Kreth Dominion respectfully declined the honor. He did not explain why. He did not need to. Everyone knew. The second ambassador came from the Yeth Collective. The third came from the Morvani Republic. The fourth came from the Stellar Confederation. One by one, they came. One by one, they refused. Some were polite about it. They talked about diplomatic complications. They mentioned cultural differences. They said that the timing was not right. Others were not polite at all. One ambassador laughed out loud when he saw her. Another asked the emperor if this was some kind of joke. A third simply walked out without saying a word. Aleth sat through every meeting. She kept her face calm. She thanked each ambassador for their time. She never cried. She never showed anger. But each rejection was like a knife slowly cutting into her heart. 12 ambassadors came to the palace. 11 refused. The 12th was running late. His name was Kang Jiwan, and he was the ambassador from Earth. Nobody expected much from him. Earth was a small planet. Humans had only joined the galactic community a few decades ago. They had no great fleets. They had no ancient technology. They were considered young and unimportant by the older species. G1 arrived at the palace wearing a simple dark suit. He was not tall. He was not impressive to look at. He had gray in his hair and laugh lines around his eyes. Before becoming a diplomat, he had been a school teacher in a small town. He had spent 20 years teaching children how to read and write. The Volanti nobles looked at him with barely hidden amusement. This was the best humanity could send. A former teacher with no military rank and no wealth? G1 did not seem bothered by their stares. He bowed respectfully to the emperor. He complimented the beauty of the palace. He asked thoughtful questions about Volanti. History. Then came the moment everyone was waiting for. The emperor's advisors stepped forward. He explained the situation carefully. Princess Aleth was being offered in marriage. However, the advisor added, the human ambassador was under no obligation to accept. In fact, given the circumstances, everyone would understand if he declined. The other ambassadors had all chosen to refuse. There would be no shame in following their example. G1 listened to every word. He nodded slowly. Then he asked a question that made the entire throne room fall silent. May I speak with the princess first? The advisor blinked. I am sorry? Before I make any decision, G1 said calmly, I would like to meet her. I would like to talk with her. I would like to know who she is. The nobles exchanged confused glances. What was this human doing? Did he not understand? The princess was blind, broken, worthless for a political marriage. Why would he waste his time talking to her? But the emperor leaned forward on his throne. For the first time in days, something like hope flickered in his old eyes. You wish to meet my daughter? He asked. G1 smiled. It was a warm smile. A genuine smile. The kind of smile that made students trust him when he was still a teacher. Your Majesty, he said, where I come from, we believe that you cannot judge a person until you have listened to their story. Everyone else looked at the princess and saw what she cannot do. I would like to see what she can. The emperor was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. Very well. Ambassador Kang, you will meet my daughter tomorrow morning. That night, Princess Aleth sat alone in her room. She had heard about the strange human who wanted to speak with her. She did not allow herself to hope. Hope had hurt her too many times before, but somewhere deep inside her heart, a small voice whispered that maybe this time would be different. All refused to marry the disabled alien princess, except one human part too. The morning sunlight filled the palace garden with warmth. Princess Aleth sat on a stone bench surrounded by flowers she had never seen. She knew them only by their smell. The sweet ones grew on her left. The sharp, fresh ones grew on her right. She had planted some of them herself, guided by touch alone. She waited. Her hands were folded in her lap. She had chosen a simple white dress for this meeting. Nothing fancy. She was tired of pretending to be something she was not. If this human was going to reject her like all the others, at least he would reject the real Aleth. Footsteps approached on the stone path. She counted them automatically. It was a habit she had developed over the years. These footsteps were calm and unhurried. They did not stomp with arrogance like the Kreth ambassador. They did not shuffle with impatience like the Morvani delegate. They walked steadily, like someone who had all the time in the world. Good morning, princess. The voice was warm, friendly. There was no trace of pity in it, no hidden disgust. Just simple politeness, as if he was greeting any other person. Good morning, Ambassador Kang, Aleth replied. Please, sit down. She heard him settle onto the bench beside her. Not too close, not too far, a respectful distance. Your garden is beautiful, he said. I cannot see it, she answered honestly, but I know every plant here. Would you describe it for me? She expected him to hesitate. Most people did. They became uncomfortable when reminded of her blindness. But Ji-won did not pause for even a moment. There are flowers everywhere, he began. Purple ones with petals that curl like little fists. Yellow ones that seem to glow in the sunlight. The leaves are dark green, almost blue. There is a small fountain in the corner. The water catches the light and throws tiny rainbows onto the stones. Alith smiled. You describe things well. I was a teacher for many years, Ji-won said. I learned that words can paint pictures for people who need them. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Birds sang in the trees overhead. The fountain bubbled softly. Alith realized that she did not feel nervous. She did not feel judged. For the first time in years, she felt like she was simply having a conversation with another person. May I ask you something? She said. Of course. Why did you ask to meet me? The others did not bother. They looked at me once and made their decision. You asked to talk first. Why? Ji-won was quiet for a few seconds. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. On Earth, there is a Nanzua's old story about a princess who was considered worthless because she was different. Everyone ignored her. Everyone dismissed her. But one person took the time to know her. That person discovered that she was the wisest and kindest of them all. He paused. I have always believed that the true value of a person is hidden inside, not displayed on the surface. Alith felt something strange in her chest. It took her a moment to recognize it. It was hope, real hope. The kind she had not allowed herself to feel in a very long time. Tell me about Earth, she said suddenly. Tell me about your home. Ji-won laughed softly. It was a good laugh, honest and free. Earth is a small world, he said. It is mostly covered in water. We have mountains that touch the clouds and forests that stretch for thousands of miles. We have cities filled with millions of people and villages where everyone knows each other's name. What do you miss most about it? He thought for a moment. The rain. I miss the rain. When I was young, I used to sit by the window and listen to it falling on the roof. It made a sound like tiny drums. My grandmother would be cooking in the kitchen. I could smell the food and hear her humming old songs. Those moments were simple, but they were perfect. Alith turned her face toward him. Even though she could not see him, I understand. Sometimes the smallest things bring the greatest peace. Yes, Ji-won agreed. They do. For the next hour, they talked about everything and nothing. Ji-won told her about Earth's oceans and deserts. He described the feeling of walking barefoot on grass. He explained what snow was and how it felt to catch snowflakes on your tongue. In return, Alith told him about her life in the palace. She explained how she had learned to navigate using sound and touch. She shared her secret hobby of composing music on an instrument she played by feel alone. She even admitted that she sometimes talked to the birds in her garden, pretending they could understand her. Do they talk back? Ji-won asked with a smile in his voice. Sometimes, she laughed, but their advice is usually terrible. It was the first time she had laughed in months, maybe years. From a distance, the palace advisors watched with confusion. The human and the princess were talking like old friends. This was not how these meetings were supposed to go. The ambassador was supposed to take one look at the blind princess and walk away, like all the others. But Kang Ji-won did not walk away. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, the time came for the meeting to end. Alith felt a sudden sadness. She had enjoyed this conversation more than any she could remember. She did not want it to stop. Ji-won stood up from the bench. She heard his clothes rustle as he straightened them. Princess Alith, he said formally. She braced herself. Here it was. The rejection. The polite excuse. She had been foolish to hope. I did not come to this palace looking for power, Ji-won continued. I am not a wealthy man. I have no great armies or fleets to offer. I am just a teacher who became a diplomat because my planet needed someone to speak for them." Aleph nodded silently. She did not trust herself to speak. "But I think," Jiwan said slowly, "that I came here looking for someone exactly like you." Her breath caught in her throat. "I accept," he said. "If you will have me, I will marry you." The words hung in the air like music. Aleph could not move, could not speak, could not believe what she was hearing. "You accept?" she whispered. "I accept," Jiwan repeated. "Not because of politics, not because of alliances, but because in 1 hour of conversation, you have shown me more wisdom, grace, and kindness than I have seen in years of diplomatic meetings." Aleph stood slowly. Her legs were trembling. Tears she had held back for so long began to fall down her face. She did not try to hide them. "Why?" she asked. "Everyone else saw my blindness and found me worthless. What do you see?" Jiwan stepped closer. Gently, he took her hand in his. "I see," he said quietly, "a woman who has been told her whole life that she is broken. And yet she has never stopped being kind, never stopped being strong, never stopped hoping. That is not weakness, princess. That is the greatest strength I have ever witnessed." In the palace throne room, messengers rushed to tell the emperor the news. The human had accepted, and everything was about to change. All refused to marry the disabled alien princess, except one human. Part 3. The news spread across the galaxy like fire. A human had agreed to marry the blind princess of the Volanthi Empire. Within hours, every communication channel was buzzing with the story. News networks on 100 worlds reported it. Politicians debated it. Ordinary citizens discussed it over meals. And almost everyone was furious. The Kreth Dominion was the first to respond officially. Their ambassador sent a formal letter to the emperor. The language was polite, but the message was clear. This marriage was an insult. A human had no place in the Volanthi royal bloodline. If the emperor went through with this, the Kreth Dominion would reconsider its participation in the coalition. The Morvani Republic said similar things. So did the Stellar Confederation. One by one, the species who had refused to marry Aleph now complained that someone else had accepted. Inside the palace, the pressure was just as intense. Lord Vashtir was a powerful Volanthi noble. His family had served the royal bloodline for generations. He was proud of his heritage. He was proud of his species. And he was absolutely disgusted by the idea of a human prince. He gathered other nobles who shared his views. They met in private rooms. They whispered in dark corners. They agreed that this marriage could not be allowed to happen. But the emperor refused to change his decision. "My daughter has been rejected by every species in the coalition," he said firmly. "She has endured mockery and cruelty that would have broken most people. And now, finally, someone sees her worth. I will not take that from her." The nobles bowed and left, but their anger did not fade. It only grew. Meanwhile, Jiwan and Aleph spent more time together. Every day, they walked in the garden. They talked for hours about their worlds, their dreams, their fears. With each conversation, they grew closer. Aleph found herself looking forward to his visits in a way she had never experienced before. When she heard his footsteps approaching, her heart would beat a little faster. When he described things for her in his patient, detailed way, she felt like she could almost see them through his words. Jiwan discovered that Aleph was far more intelligent than anyone had given her credit for. She had taught herself 3 languages. She could play complex musical pieces from memory. She understood politics better than most of the emperor's advisors. Her blindness had never stopped her mind from growing. One evening, a formal dinner was held to introduce Jiwan to the coalition ambassadors. It was a test. Everyone knew it. The nobles wanted to see if the human would embarrass himself. The ambassadors wanted to find reasons to oppose the marriage. Even Ela's few supporters were nervous about how the night would go. The dining hall was magnificent. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling. The table stretched for 50 meters. Hundreds of guests filled the seats. Representing dozens of species from across the galaxy. G1 walked in wearing the traditional formal robes of his position. Aleth walked beside him, her hand resting lightly on his arm. She could not see the stairs, but she could feel them. Hundreds of eyes, judging, measuring, waiting for something to go wrong. They took their seats near the Emperor. The dinner began. For the first hour, everything was calm. The food was served. Polite conversation filled the room. G1 answered questions about Earth with patience and humor. He did not try to impress anyone. He simply told the truth about his world and his people. Then the Kreth ambassador stood up. His name was Lord Orthax. He was the same ambassador who had refused Aleth in less than 3 seconds. Tonight, he had been drinking heavily. His scales reflected delight in angry patterns. "I have a question for the human," he announced loudly. The room fell silent. "Of course," G1 replied calmly. Lord Orthax smiled coldly. "Why would any man accept a bride that no one else wanted? What is wrong with you? Are you desperate? Are you foolish? Or are you simply too stupid to understand what you have gotten yourself into?" Gasps filled the room. Even by diplomatic standards, this was incredibly rude. Several guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Ela's hand tightened on the table. She wanted to speak, to defend G1. But before she could say a word, he was already standing up. G1 did not raise his voice. He did not show anger. He simply looked at Lord Orthax with those calm, steady eyes. "You ask why I accepted Princess Aleth," he said. "Let me tell you, the room was completely silent now. I accepted because when I spoke with her, I found intelligence that would put most scholars to shame. I found kindness that she shows even to those who have hurt her. I found courage that has never broken despite years of cruelty." He paused. "You looked at her for 3 seconds and decided she was worthless. I spent 1 hour with her and discovered she is extraordinary." His voice grew quieter, but somehow more powerful. "So, perhaps the question is not what is wrong with me. Perhaps the question is what is wrong with everyone who could not see what was right in front of them." Lord Orthax opened his mouth to respond. G1 was not finished. "You asked if I am desperate or foolish," he continued. "I am neither. I am simply a man who was raised to judge people by who they are, not by what they lack. On Earth, we have a saying. A person's true character is revealed not by their strengths, but by how they treat those they consider beneath them." He looked around the room slowly. "I have seen how many of you have treated Princess Aleth. I wonder what that reveals about your character." The silence was absolute. Lord Orthax sat down slowly. His face was dark with embarrassment and anger. But he had no response. Nothing he could say would undo the damage of his own words. Under the table, Aleth reached for G1's hand. She found it. She squeezed it gently. Tears were forming in her eyes again, but this time they were not tears of sorrow. For the first time in her entire life, someone had stood up for her. Someone had defended her worth in front of the entire galaxy. And in that moment, Princess Aleth Vershan realized something important. She was beginning to fall in love with this quiet, humble human from a small planet called Earth. After the dinner, they walked together in the moonlit garden. Neither spoke for a long time. The night air was cool and peaceful. Finally, Aleth broke the silence. "What you said in there," she whispered. "No one has ever spoken about me like that before." G1 smiled gently. "I only told the truth. Most people do not bother with the truth when it comes to someone like me." He stopped walking. He turned to face her, even though she could not see his face. "Aleth," he said softly, "I need you to understand something. I did not accept this marriage out of pity. I did not do it for politics. I did it because in you, I found something I had almost stopped believing existed." "What is that?" she asked. "Someone who sees the world differently than everyone else. Someone whose heart remained kind even when the world was cruel. Someone worth fighting for." Aleth felt her heart overflow with emotions she could not name. She stepped closer to him. Slowly, carefully, she raised her hand and touched his face. Her fingers traced the lines around his eyes, the shape of his jaw, the curve of his smile. She could not see him, but she had never seen anyone more clearly. All refused to marry the disabled alien princess, except one human part 4. The weeks that followed should have been peaceful. The wedding preparations were underway. Tailors measured Jiwan for ceremonial robes. Cooks planned the feast. Musicians rehearsed ancient songs. The palace buzzed with activity. But beneath the surface, something dark was growing. Lord Vashtir had not forgotten his anger. He watched Jiwan and Aleth walk together in the gardens. He listened to the servants gossip about how happy the princess seemed. Each smile, each laugh, each moment of joy only made his hatred grow stronger. A human on the Volanti throne. The idea made his blood boil. He gathered his allies in secret. There were more of them than anyone suspected. Nobles who felt their bloodline was being polluted. Military officers who thought humans were too weak to respect. Merchants who feared that Earth would gain too much influence through this marriage. They met in a hidden chamber beneath the palace. The walls were thick. No one could hear them. "The wedding cannot happen," Vashtir declared. "We must stop it." "How?" asked one of his supporters. "The Emperor has given his approval. To oppose the marriage openly would be treason." Vashtir smiled coldly. "Then we will not oppose it openly. We will make the human leave on his own. Or we will make sure he cannot stay at all." The plot began with small things. One morning, Jiwan's breakfast made him violently ill. The palace doctors examined him and found traces of a mild poison in his food. Not enough to cause lasting harm, but enough to send a message. A few days later, the transport vehicle taking him to a diplomatic meeting suddenly malfunctioned. The navigation system failed. The vehicle crashed into a building. Jiwan escaped with only bruises, but it was a close call. His communication devices started glitching. Messages to Earth were delayed or disappeared entirely. He felt increasingly isolated. Through it all, Jiwan remained calm. He did not complain. He did not accuse anyone publicly. But he was not stupid. He knew these were not accidents. Someone was trying to drive him away. Aleth noticed something was wrong before anyone told her. She could not see, but she could hear. And lately, she had been hearing strange things. Whispered conversations that stopped when she approached. Footsteps in corridors where there should be none. The change in breathing patterns when certain nobles spoke about Jiwan. One evening, she asked him directly. "Something is happening," she said. "Something bad. I can feel it. Tell me the truth." Jiwan hesitated. He had been trying to protect her from worry, but he realized that keeping secrets from her would only insult her intelligence. So he told her everything. The poison, the crash, the sabotage. Aleth listened in silence. When he finished, her face was not afraid. It was determined. "We need to find out who is doing this," she said firmly. "How?" "They are being very careful." Aleth smiled. It was a smile Jiwan had not seen before. Sharp, focused. The smile of someone who had spent her entire life learning to survive in a world that tried to ignore her. "They are being careful because they think I am helpless," she said. "They forget that I have learned to notice things no one else does." I hear conversations they think are private. I recognize footsteps they think are silent. I know when someone is lying by the tremor in their voice. She reached out and took his hand. Let them underestimate me. It will be their mistake. Over the following days, Aleph conducted her own investigation. She moved through the palace like a ghost. She listened at doors. She tracked the movements of suspicious servants. She remembered every detail. The servants trusted her. They had always felt comfortable talking freely around the blind princess, assuming she was not really paying attention. Now, their carelessness became her weapon. She heard a cook mention receiving money from an unknown source. She noticed that certain guards changed their patrol routes on the same days that bad things happened to Jiwan. She recognized the voice of a noble's assistant, making quiet arrangements piece by piece. She assembled the puzzle. On the 7th day, she came to Jiwan with her findings. "It is Lord Vashtir," she said with certainty. "He's behind everything. He has allies among the kitchen staff, the guards, and at least 3 other noble houses. They have been planning to make your life so difficult that you will give up and leave." Jiwan was amazed. "How did you discover all this?" "They forgot I was listening," Aleph said simply. "They always do." Together, they brought the evidence to the emperor. Aleph presented her findings with the precision of a trained investigator. She named every conspirator. She described every plot. She explained how she had pieced together the truth from fragments of conversation and suspicious patterns. The emperor listened in stunned silence. When she finished, he looked at his daughter with new eyes. For years, he had worried about her. He had feared she was too vulnerable, too fragile to survive in the harsh world of galactic politics. He had been completely wrong. "Lord Vashtir," the emperor said slowly, "has been a trusted member of this court for 30 years. And for 30 years, Aleph replied, he has believed that power belongs only to those he considers worthy. He sees me as unworthy. He sees Jiwan as unworthy. He would rather destroy this marriage than accept that he might be wrong about what makes a person valuable." The emperor nodded grimly. "Then he will face justice." That night, Lord Vashtir was arrested. His allies were rounded up. The conspirators were brought before the imperial court in chains. Vashtir glared at Jiwan and Aleph as he was led away. His face was twisted with hatred. "This is not over," he hissed. "The galaxy will never accept a human on this throne. You are making enemies you cannot imagine." Jiwan stepped forward. He looked at Vashtir without fear. "I have been a teacher, Lord Vashtir. I have dealt with bullies before. They are always the same. They are loud when they feel powerful. They are silent when they are caught." Vashtir had no response as the guards dragged him away. Aleph stood beside Jiwan. Her hand found his in the darkness. "You were brave today," Jiwan said quietly. "So were you," she replied. "You did not run away. You could have left at any time. You could have escaped back to Earth and been safe. And leave you? Never." She leaned her head against his shoulder. Around them, the palace was finally quiet. The conspiracy had been broken. The traitors had been caught. But somewhere in the back of her mind, Aleph remembered Vashtir's final words. "This is not over." She feared he might be right for now. Though, she allowed herself a moment of peace. She stood in the silent corridor with the man she was beginning to love. And she let herself believe that everything would be all right. Tomorrow. The wedding preparations would continue, and nothing would stop them from becoming husband and wife. All refused to marry the disabled alien princess, except one human part 5. The wedding day arrived with perfect weather. The twin suns of the Volanti homeworld cast golden light across the imperial palace. Thousands of guests filled the great hall. Dignitaries from 100 worlds sat in their assigned seats. Cameras broadcast the ceremony to billions of viewers across the galaxy. Aleth stood in her chambers, wearing the traditional wedding gown of Volanthi royalty. The fabric was white with threads of silver that caught the light like starshine. Her silver hair was arranged with tiny crystals that chimed softly. When she moved, her heart was pounding. A servant entered the room. "Princess, it is time." Aleth took a deep breath. She had dreamed of this moment for years. Not the wedding itself, but what it represented. Acceptance, love, someone who saw her as whole, not broken dot, and now it was really happening. She walked slowly through the palace corridors, guided only by the sounds around her. She had memorized every step, every turn, every distance. She did not need eyes to find her way. She had walked these halls 1,000 times in darkness. The doors to the great hall opened. Music filled the air. A hush fell over the crowd. Aleth could feel thousands of eyes on her. She kept her head high. She kept her pace steady. She would not give anyone the satisfaction of seeing her stumble. At the far end of the hall, Ji-won waited. He watched her walk toward him with tears forming in his eyes. She was beautiful, not because of her dress or her jewelry, but because of the quiet strength in every step she took. She moved through a world she could not see with more grace than most people showed in a world they could. Aleth reached the altar. She felt Ji-won take her hand. His touch was warm and steady. "You made it," he whispered. "Did you doubt me?" She whispered back, "Never." The high priest began the ancient ceremony. The words were in the old Volanthi language, spoken exactly as they had been for thousands of years. The crowd listened in respectful silence. The vows were exchanged. Promises of loyalty, of partnership, of love that would endure beyond the stars. And then, everything went wrong. The first explosion shook the building like an earthquake. Chunks of stone fell from the ceiling. Guests screamed and dove for cover. Guards drew their weapons. A second explosion tore a hole in the eastern wall. Through the smoke and dust, armed figures poured into the great hall. They wore black armor and carried weapons that hummed with deadly energy. There were dozens of them, mercenaries, hired soldiers with no loyalty to anyone except whoever paid them the most. The lead mercenary stepped forward. His helmet hid his face, but his voice was cold and mechanical. "This wedding is over," he announced. "The human will come with us. Anyone who interferes will be eliminated." Chaos erupted. Palace guards rushed to defend the royal family. Guests tried to flee. Screams echoed off the stone walls. Ji-won pulled Aleth behind him. His body became a shield between her and the attackers. "Ji-won, no," Aleth said urgently. "They want you. You should run." "I am not going anywhere," he replied firmly. "But they will hurt you." He looked over his shoulder at her. "Even in the middle of danger," he smiled. "Then they will have to go through me first." The mercenaries advanced. The palace guards fought bravely, but they were outnumbered. One by one, they fell. Soon, only a handful remained standing. The lead mercenary walked toward Ji-won and Aleth. His weapon was aimed directly at them. "Last chance, human. Come with us peacefully, and no one else gets hurt." Ji-won did not move. "I made a promise to this woman," he said quietly. "I promised to stand beside her. I promised to protect her. I am not breaking that promise. Not for you. Not for anyone." The mercenary laughed. "Brave words." "Stupid words." He raised his weapon. "Wait," Aleth said suddenly. "Wait, I can help you." The mercenary paused. "What can a blind princess do?" "I can hear things," she said. "Right now, I can hear you soldiers breathing. I can count their heartbeats. There are 42 of you. I can also hear the palace reinforcements arriving from the west corridor. They are 30 seconds away." The mercenary hesitated. I can hear that 3 of your men on the left are wounded and trying to hide it. And I can hear," she continued, her voice growing stronger, "the sound of the Emperor's elite guard approaching from the roof access. You have perhaps 15 seconds before you are completely surrounded." It was a gamble. Aleth could hear the reinforcements coming, but she was not certain of the exact numbers. She was using her acute hearing to paint a picture that might or might not be entirely accurate, but the mercenaries did not know that. The lead mercenary looked around nervously. He could hear sounds in the distance now, too. Running footsteps, shouted commands, the hum of weapons powering up. "Retreat," he ordered suddenly. "All units, retreat now." The mercenaries began pulling back. Some fired covering shots as they fled. Within moments, they were disappearing through the hole they had made in the wall. The palace reinforcements burst into the hall just as the last attackers escaped. The great hall was filled with smoke and debris. Several guests were wounded. The beautiful decorations were destroyed. But G1 and Aleth were alive. They stood at the altar, still holding hands. Their wedding clothes were covered in dust. Their faces were scratched, but they were unbroken. The Emperor rushed toward them. His old face was pale with fear and relief. "Are you hurt? Are you all right?" "We are fine, Father," Aleth assured him. "The attackers have fled." The Emperor looked at the destruction around him. Then he looked at his daughter and her human groom. They were still standing exactly where they had been when the ceremony was interrupted. "You did not run," he said to G1. "You could have escaped. You could have saved yourself." G1 shook his head. "I came here to marry your daughter. I will not leave until that is done." The Emperor stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his weathered face. He turned to the high priest, who was climbing out from behind the altar, his ceremonial robes torn and dusty. "Well?" the Emperor asked. "Are you going to finish the ceremony?" The high priest blinked in surprise. He looked at the ruined hall, the wounded guests, the smoke still rising from the walls. "Your Majesty?" Now, the Emperor confirmed. "My daughter and this man have proven they are willing to face anything together. I will not make them wait another moment." The high priest straightened his robes with as much dignity as he could manage. He returned to the altar. The remaining guests gathered around. Guards stood watch at every entrance. Medical teams tended to the wounded. And there, amid the ruins and the chaos, the ceremony continued. "Do you take this woman as your wife?" "I do," G1 said. "Do you take this man as your husband?" Aleth smiled through her tears. "I do. Then by the ancient laws of the Volanthi Empire, I declare you husband and wife." The hall erupted in cheers. People who had been hiding moments ago now shouted with joy. Cameras that had captured the attack now broadcast something far more important. A blind princess and a humble human, standing together among the ruins, proven worthy by fire. They had been tested, and they had not broken. All refused to marry the disabled alien princess, except one human part 6. The galaxy had watched. Billions of beings across hundreds of worlds had seen the attack on the royal wedding. They had seen the mercenaries storm the Great Hall. They had seen the chaos, the explosions, the terror. But more importantly, they had seen what happened next. They had seen a human step in front of his blind bride to shield her with his own body. They had seen a princess who could not see use her extraordinary hearing to turn the tide. They had seen 2 people refuse to give up, refuse to run, refuse to be broken. The story spread faster than any news report could track. Within hours, it was the only thing anyone was talking about. On the Kreth homeworld, citizens gathered in public squares to watch the footage. Many of them had laughed when they first heard about the wedding. A human and a disabled princess? What a joke. But now, watching the replay of G1 standing firm against armed attackers, They found themselves unable to laugh on Earth. G1 became an instant hero. The quiet former teacher who had traveled to the stars and shown the galaxy what humanity was made of. Schools taught his story. Parents told it to their children at bedtime. Even the species who had opposed the marriage began to reconsider. The Morvani delegate released a public statement admitting that they had been wrong about Princess Aleph. The Stellar Confederation sent formal congratulations. One by one, the critics fell silent. Lord Vashtir's remaining allies scattered like insects fleeing the light. Whatever support they might have had evaporated. No one wanted to be associated with the attack on the wedding. No one wanted to stand against the couple who had captured the hearts of billions. 3 months after the wedding, the Emperor called a special assembly. He was old now. His health had been failing for years. Everyone knew he did not have much time left. But he stood before the gathered nobles, diplomats, and citizens with the same strength he had shown for decades. "I have ruled this empire for 60 years, he announced. "I have seen wars and peace. I have witnessed the rise and fall of great powers. I have made decisions that affected trillions of lives." He paused. The hall was silent. "But I have never been more proud than I am today." He turned to look at Aleph and G1, who stood beside his throne. "My daughter was born without sight. For years, I feared this would doom her to a life of loneliness and pain. I tried to protect her. I tried to hide her. I believed that the galaxy would never accept her." Tears glistened in the old emperor's eyes. "I was wrong. The galaxy did not accept her. But she did not need their acceptance. She found her own worth. She found her own strength. And she found someone who recognized what she truly was." He stepped forward and took Aleph's hand. "Today, I name Princess Aleph Versheen as my heir. When I am gone, she will rule the Velanthi Empire." Gasps filled the hall. This was unprecedented. A blind empress? It had never happened in 10,000 years of history. But the emperor was not finished. "Some of you will say that she cannot rule because she cannot see. To you, I say this. My daughter sees more clearly than anyone in this room. She sees truth where others see only appearance. She sees strength where others see only weakness. She sees love where others see only politics." He looked at G1. "And she found a partner who shares her vision. Together, they will lead this empire into a future greater than anything we have known." The silence stretched for a long moment. Then, one by one, the nobles began to kneel. First the younger ones, then the older ones, then the diplomats, then the guards. Within minutes, every person in the hall was on their knees before the blind princess and her human husband. That night, Aleph and G1 sat together in their private garden. The stars shone overhead, countless points of light in the darkness. "Can you describe them for me?" Aleph asked. "The stars?" G1 looked up at the sky. He was quiet for a moment, searching for the right words. "They look like hope," he said finally, "like tiny promises scattered across the darkness. Some are bright, some are faint, but together they fill the emptiness with light." Aleph smiled. "That is beautiful. It reminds me of you." She turned toward him, even though she could not see his face. "Me? You were alone in darkness for so long," G1 said softly. "Everyone told you that you were nothing, that you would never shine. But you never stopped hoping. You never stopped trying. And now look at you. You are going to rule an empire." Aleph laughed quietly. "I am terrified." "Good. That means you will take it seriously." He took her hand. "But you will not be alone. I will be right beside you. Every step, every decision, every challenge." "Why?" she asked. "You could have stayed on Earth. You could have lived a quiet, peaceful life. Why did you give up everything for me?" G1 thought about the question. He remembered the first time he saw her in that garden, surrounded by flowers she could not see. He remembered her laugh when he told her about rain on windows. He remembered her courage when she faced the conspirators, her strength when she stood beside him during the attack. Because on Earth, he said, I was a teacher. I spent my life helping children discover their potential. I watched them grow. I watched them believe in themselves. It was good work. Important work. He squeezed her hand. But then I came here, and I found someone with more potential than anyone I had ever met. Someone who had been told her whole life that she was worthless. I could not walk away from that. I could not leave you believing what they said about you. And now? Aleph asked. Now I know I made the right choice. You are going to be an amazing empress, Aleph. You are going to change this galaxy. And I am going to be by your side, watching you prove everyone wrong. Aleph leaned her head against his shoulder. Above them, the stars continued their ancient dance. Jiwan? Yes, I love you. The words hung in the cool night air. They were simple words. Common words. But coming from her, in this moment, they carried the weight of everything she had survived, everything she had overcome, everything she had become. Jiwan smiled. I love you too, he said. I loved you from the moment you asked me to describe your garden. I loved you when you faced down your enemies without fear. I loved you when you stood with me in the ruins of our wedding and refused to give up. He kissed the top of her head gently. And I will love you for every moment that comes after this. Every good day. Every hard day. Every challenge and every victory. You will never be alone again. I promise. Aleph closed her eyes. For once, the darkness did not feel lonely. It felt like home. Far away. Across the galaxy, the story of the blind princess and the human who loved her was still spreading. It would become legend. It would be told for generations. It would inspire countless beings to look beyond appearance, beyond ability, beyond prejudice. But in that quiet garden, under the watching stars, Aleph and Jiwan did not think about legends. They only thought about each other, and that was enough.